You make $15,000 this month. Your phone buzzes on the kitchen counter, the direct deposit notification, same blue banner it always is. You don't smile. You just sit there for a second, looking at a number that used to be a fantasy and is now just Tuesday. Across town, a phone buzzes too. Same group chat. A different kind of quiet follows it. You don't know it yet, but the friendship you've had since you were 17 years old just started its slow countdown, and no bank statement will ever tell you that. Nobody warned you about this part. For years, you were all in the same boat. Broke, laughing about it, splitting a pizza 4 ways because nobody could afford their own. Back then, loyalty was free. Cost nothing to be equal because you all were. Nobody had to perform generosity or swallow envy, because there was nothing yet to be envious of. The group chat was just jokes and plans and complaints about the same landlord-shaped misery you all shared. Then one of you got promoted. Then a second job offer came in from a company none of you had heard of, in an industry none of you understood. And slowly, the income that used to track together $1,500, $2,000, $2,200 split apart. Yours kept climbing. Theirs leveled off. Nobody decided this on purpose. That's the part nobody tells you. Nobody sat down and chose to drift. It happened the way water finds a crack, quietly, and only obvious once everything on one side is wet. There's a friend in every group like this. Call him Ryan. Ryan got the same opportunities you did, the same recruiter messages, the same chance to learn the skill that was about to make everyone's salary irrelevant. Ryan looks at it and feels tired just thinking about it. He stays in the job he knows. He tells himself stability matters more. And in a real sense, it does. Ryan isn't wrong to want safety, and you were never smarter than him for wanting more. He just made a different bet. You happen to win yours faster. You don't know it yet, but the moment your income crosses theirs by a wide enough margin, you stop being one of the group and start being a variable the group has to account for. It starts small. Someone jokes that you can obviously afford to cover the Uber this time. You laugh it off, you do cover it, because it's nothing to you and you don't want to make it a thing. But it becomes a pattern. Once it's a pattern, it's not generosity anymore. It's an unspoken tax, and everyone at the table knows the rate, even if nobody says the number out loud. Nobody warned you about this part. Here's the feeling nobody puts into words. You start screening your own updates before you post them. A new apartment, a trip, a watch you've wanted for 3 years. You catch yourself thinking about who's going to see it before you think about whether you actually want to share it. You're not posting your life anymore. You're managing a perception. And you do this so automatically now that you don't even notice the moment you started. A friend's birthday dinner. 12 people at a long table, the kind of place that used to feel like a splurge for all of you and now feels like nothing to you and like a real decision for half the table. The question goes around the way it always does. What's everyone getting? Should we just split it evenly? You already know the answer everyone's thinking and nobody's saying. An even split costs you nothing and costs someone else real money. You offer to cover more. Someone says no, it's fine, a little too fast. The dinner continues. Nothing was resolved. Everything was understood. Have you ever done this? Have you ever felt the specific discomfort of being the only person at a table who could afford to relax? This is where the bias hides, and it's worth sitting with for a second because almost nobody names it correctly. It's not greed. It's not jealousy, not really, not in the cartoon sense people imagine. It's something closer to a quiet, constant comparison nobody asked to run, your brain checking your position against the group every time the group is in the room, whether you want it to or not. Behavioral economists have a name for it. It's not your absolute income that determines how good you feel. It's your income relative to the people beside you. Make $15,000 a month while your friends make $1,500, and the gap itself becomes the story, not the number, the distance. There was a financial planner, call her the ignored voice because every group like this has one, who used to tell her clients early in their careers. Protect the friendships now while the gap is still small because once it's large, no amount of generosity closes it. People didn't listen. They thought money would make their friendships easier, not stranger. By the time they came back to her, the friendships had already gone quiet, and there was nothing left to plan around. Think about the last time you stayed in a friend group longer than you maybe should have, even after it started feeling different. What made you stay? Nobody warned you about this part. And by now, it doesn't sound like sympathy anymore. It sounds like something closer to an accusation. Nobody warned you, And somewhere underneath that sentence is the question of whether anyone could have. Now here's what's actually happening underneath all of it. The financial mechanics nobody puts on a finance show, because it's not about stocks or interest rates. It's about what asymmetric income does to a closed social system. When everyone earns the same, the unspoken rules of a friendship, who pays, who plans, who picks the restaurant, don't need enforcing because the math takes care of itself. Once income diverges, every one of those old casual rules becomes a small negotiation, every single time. Which meant that things that used to be automatic, splitting a check, picking a vacation spot, deciding whose apartment to use for game night, now require somebody to make a decision about money every time you see each other. And making financial decisions again and again in front of people you used to be financially identical to is exhausting in a way nobody prepares you for. You start picking cheaper places to be considerate, and your friends notice you're doing it, and it doesn't land as kindness. It lands as proof that you know there's a gap, which makes the gap feel even more real than if you just said nothing at all. Which meant that the workaround, the thoughtful, well-meaning workaround, often makes things worse, not better. Comes on a Thursday. You're at a friend's apartment, the one who still lives with 2 roommates because rent alone would eat half his check. You've just signed a lease on a place by yourself. You haven't told the group yet, you've been waiting for a good moment, except there is no good moment. There's only the moment you finally have to say it or keep avoiding it. Someone asks what you've been up to. You tell them. The room doesn't go silent exactly. It goes careful. Someone says, "That's awesome, man," in the specific tone people use when they mean it and also feel something else they're not going to name. You sit there holding a beer you're not really drinking. Nobody says anything wrong. Nothing about the rest of the night is wrong. It's just different in a way you can't undo by being nicer about it. One night, weeks later, you open your banking app just to look at the number, the way you used to check it out of anxiety and now check it out of something closer to disbelief. You think about texting the group chat. A joke, something self-deprecating, the kind of thing that used to make everyone laugh because you were all equally broke and equally hopeful. Your thumb hovers over the message. You don't know anymore if it'll land as funny or as something else. You delete it before sending. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. Nobody warned you about this part. Not as sympathy now. As quiet indictment of a culture that talks endlessly about earning more and says almost nothing about what earning more actually costs you socially, the day after the celebration ends. The friend group itself was never broken. It worked exactly the way social comparison always works among people who started as equals. The only question is, designed to survive equality or designed to survive difference? It was never built for difference. That's the part that finally answers what's been sitting underneath this whole story. The friendships that feel effortless in your 20s usually aren't immune to money. They're just untested by it yet. And the friend who pulled away fastest, the one who said "so happy for you" the loudest, the one you assumed was fine, turns out to be the one who stopped replying first. Not because he was bitter, because watching you build the exact life he wanted, and didn't get hurt in a way that was easier to handle from a distance. The date you used to imagine, the one where you'd finally feel like you'd made it, surrounded by everyone who knew you before, comes and goes on an ordinary Tuesday. You don't even notice it until that evening. Sitting alone in an apartment that's quiet in a way you didn't plan for. Nobody throws a party. You almost miss the milestone entirely because by the time it arrives, half the people you wanted to share it with aren't really in the room with you anymore. Not in the way they used to be. This happened to 2 guys from a small town in Ohio. It happened to a group of college roommates in Texas. It happened, in its own quiet version, to almost anyone who has ever crossed a real income line while the people around them didn't. Maybe you've already lived some version of this and you know exactly which dinner it was, which message never got answered. Maybe you're in the middle of it right now, still telling yourself it's nothing, still covering the bill a little too often, still rehearsing how to bring up the new job. Or maybe this is the first time you've thought about it at all, and now you will every time the check comes to the table. Think of one person right now, the friend who's still inside the version of your life you've already outgrown, and doesn't know it yet. The one you keep meaning to call. Send them this. Nobody warned you about this part. So the real question was never how much money would change you. It was always whether the people closest to you could survive watching you become someone they couldn't quite keep up with, and whether you could survive it too.